All right, now that we have done that, we can now simply do two things. First of all, I want to know how high is currently my tower, right? So the way that I want to do this, of course, you could just do a simple multiplication, taking your step and your number of floors, of course. But actually, we want to make you understand Grasshopper a little bit better. So I want to introduce you to this component called list item. Now, list item is a very handy component. You will use it a lot. So let me just type in list item. This is this guy here. If I just Control Alt mouse button, you can see it's in set list, the first component actually featured in list. And what this does is it can filter you an individual instance out of your list. To understand that or make that understandable, I will now get a panel again. So I will just type in panel. Also, you can just find a panel under the params and the input, as you can see there. And I will just hook this guy up, the polygon. And currently I have a long list of basically closed curves, right? And I can also go to my param viewer, which is also in params. So maybe just type in param viewer, or param actually already gives you that. And if you hook this guy up, it will show you currently that you have one branch, which is just one kind of list with 106 items. And of course, that can be different to yours, depending on those settings here. But in a nutshell, this is basically what we're working in. We are working with one list with a lot of items right now, or more than 100 items. And we want to filter the last item. Now, to do that, we would actually have to somehow pick and filter that. And this component here, list item, helps us do that. So we can just supply basically a list of any values. This could be a numeric list or any geometry list. And what it does is takes in the list in this input L, and it will need an item index, and then it will give you only that one item out of that list. Of course, I'm going to explain it a little bit better now. So let's say you have this giant list here, and you want to filter the first closed curve. Yeah, you put this list into my list item, and if I hover or click on that, activate that so it's green, you can see now that currently the first item in this list is being filtered. That is due to the I input here, which is the item index. Now, what is the item index? The item index is always indicated or listed here in the first bracket. You see that you have always closed curve, but you can see that you have here a numeric value that actually goes on, and this is your item index. So depending on that number, you will retrieve that geometry. And I can just quickly show you that by just hooking up a slider, let's say 0 to 50 or 100. And if I just put it on here, click on that so it's green, you can then see it's marked. And now you can just flip through all of your geometry that you have in that list, selecting basically only one index by the item index. Okay, and the wrap input is just a boolean which means true false. And if it's true, that means that the list can be wrapped. So if I just increase my number here, double clicking it, and increase my slider number, again double click, and just you can also just scroll. Yeah, that means that if my list maximum has been surpassed here, as you can see, this is my last item actually in the list. If the wrap is on, it will wrap back to the beginning of that list, as you can see, right? It's going back, so it just keeps on iterating through that list. If I don't do that, and I just say Boolean toggle is the component, Boolean toggle, just put it into V and just leave it at false. As soon as your item index is over the count number or over the number that you have actually, it will be orange. And if you go here, you will say supplied index is too high. That means that item can't be retrieved because it is now cut to the domain of 0 till 106. 106 because if I go here, put this guy up here, you can see that my last index that I can actually pick is 105. So if I go back here with my slider to under 105, you can see it's okay now. It's not orange anymore, and I can still retrieve a number. Okay. So that is very important to know. So I can just get rid of that guy or just put it to true because I actually want that to be wrapped. I want that to be able to go back and forth into that list. So I'm just going to leave it at true. And usually it's already set default to true, so I can just delete that because if I hover over that, it's already set to true. So you don't need that extra component flying around on your canvas. So the way that I want to do this now is actually, I could just simply take a slider and click on this and then try to somehow find or identify the last one. So there you go. Now I have found the last item actually here, right? But the problem here is as soon as I just change my slider for the number of floors, for instance, I will lose the last item because the list has been changed, right? So there must be a more intelligent way to actually do that. The nice thing about this is now you can supply a logic to it that always filters the last item that you have in that list. And the way to do that is to not use a slider, but to double click and use a panel. And the panel is a very intelligent component. It can not only read information, but it can also supply information. So you can see it has an input, but it also has an output. So if I just delete it and just click again on panel, you can just double click here and write something now. And I want to write -1, enter, or enter, click on your canvas. Now if I supply that guy here, and I click on that, it will now more or less magically give me the last item that I have in that list. Why? Because I'm telling him that taking the list that I have here, if I take another panel from my params, put it in here, I tell him, hey, whatever I have as my first item, which is this item index 0, do a -1 of that and give me that value or that geometry back. And -1, 0 would be actually always going to the last item here, which is -0 going back into the list. That's why we need the wrap. It will go to the last item, and this is the item 109, which is in this case the last item. And this is just telling it now parametrically to always filter me the last item that I have there in that list. So if I change my number of floors, you can see it will always give me or retrieve the last instance that I have in that list by just taking the -1. If I do -2, it will give me the almost or the second last item. And you can all see, you can just filter back in that list. So you're just taking in 0 and then minus a value to go back into the list and get me the number or the value or the geometry. So -11, for instance, and you will get the 11th, the element that is 11 items back into the list. Now we can just go here, change it to 1, because that's the one that I want, right? And that's very good. So I got this here, and what I want to do now is just to display the height. I want to know how high is my last slab there. So what I could do is basically hook up, somehow I need to filter the z height, right? So you remember that a point is made up of x, y, and z, and I want to actually retrieve this time the z value of that curve. Now we have understood that there's a construct point, but there's also a deconstruct point. So we can say deconstructed point. Now this will take a point and actually deconstruct it back into the numeric values that define x, y, and z. To show you that, I could just hook up my list here of the individual series of points, put them here, and if I hover over x and y, you will see 0. But if I take the z value here, you can see that I have now a numeric value of the z locations of my points. That's very good. So I can just take this guy here and supply the curve actually, but the problem is the type is wrong. The data type is wrong because this is a curve and I want to supply a point in here. So you can see what happens here. Input is a point. So what I need to do is I need to somehow filter a meaningful point out of this curve. And because it's a closed curve, I can just use a component called area. This guy here, area, you can find it under surface. and then the area. And you will also notice these little icon here, these two dots or half dots. I will come to that later on. This is something new in Grasshopper and Rhino 6 that just allows parallel computing. But again, I will show you that later on. If you just put this guy into G, you will now not only get a numeric value of the overall area for this specific slab. So this is the area, you can see 2000, almost 2500, but you will also get a centroid, which is actually a point. So if I just put that C into my numeric value here, you can now retrieve this numeric value. And if I just hook up a panel, so I just type in panel and hook up the Z here, you can now see, okay, the last height that I actually have here is 234. Okay, so that is something that you can, of course, also filter with my points here. So I could take the points that I have constructed before. So basically what I could do is just simply take this setup here, just make a copy paste and supply my list here of points, and you will of course get the same value. You can then deconstruct it in the same way that you just have done with that centroid here, and you get the same value, which is just showing you basically right now the last height. But I just wanted to show you this here because you can now convert a closed curve into a centroid and then extract the centroid location by deconstructing that point. So it's a little bit more a longer stretch, but helps you to understand Grasshopper and its functions a little bit better. Now, of course, this is not the full height. I would have to say, okay, this is my total height, but I actually maybe have a roof. That roof is maybe a little bit bigger, so I will just do a simple addition. Just type in plus on your keyboard, you will get the addition button. You take in this guy, and maybe you just apply it, hook it up to your overall floor height. So this slider goes to your addition, and let's say at the end your overall height is 237 in this case. Yeah, and the nice thing about this is now maybe I can just put it back to my where my sliders are here. I click on this panel, right click, and I can also change the name here. So current tower height. Okay, and now you have basically changed the name here, so you understand that the panel actually has some meaning, which is giving you some information. That information is the current height. I can also click here, right mouse button, and let's say I want to change the font settings. I will just go down here to the font settings and go to custom font, and you will get a pop-up window. And now I want to control this size. I want to make it a little more bold, and I want to make it a little more bigger so I can read it from far away. I press OK. And now you can see that I have changed that, and I can see it basically much better here. Now, if you want to take this to the next level, we could also do something which is a little more intelligent. And that is saying that we want to actually generate a string of information. And I'm just going to do it now. So you can see I'm going to use the component called concatenate. Sorry, you have to write it, of course, correctly. Concatenate, that is a command. You can also find it under sets and text. And now what I want to do is I want to say take this value, and in B I want to say a panel. Double click in there, do a space and M, or just type in meter. Space because I want to have a gap between the number and the text. So I just click on my canvas to allow this panel to be constructed into Grasshopper, set it up, and now you will get a text from my panel here. So if I just do it like this, you will now have value and also the unit setting of that. Hi, I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please feel free to leave a comment, a like, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel. Also note that this video is part of a 13-hour-long online tutorial series called Algorithmic Skyscraper Design. You can find it on my e-learning platform, Design Upgrade. That is courses.design-upgrade.com. To get access to all online courses, just sign up and secure yourself an all-access membership. Choose one of the many courses available with one new added course each month. In the Algorithmic Skyscraper Design, I will take you from zero to hero for practice-based visual scripting inside Rhino. Learn also to create advanced environmental simulations and design user interfaces with Grasshopper. So see you there, and let us make some design upgrades.